on the agenda tonight, we want to talk about a few projects coming up, Mill Street Bridge maintenance, State Highway 15 bypass, future utility interceptor underneath the new bypass right away. Some of our CIPs for road maintenance and capital improvement projects. So,
Yeah. I think the first one is Mill Street Bridge maintenance. The bridge has been there since the 30s. It's still in pretty good shape, but it does need some maintenance. Me and Dan looked at it. I think what we're looking at is putting a little bit of money in the maintenance in the budget next year for shotcrete maintenance. Basically, go in there and they'll spray crete some of the areas that are deteriorating or spalling.
they'll have to, the rebar is exposed, so they'll have to be sandblasted, and then they'll shotcrete it for us, so we have new surface and seal out the water.
We're not sure of the cost yet, so we're going to be trying to get that. I have no idea how much. It's not like you go to Menards and say how much is shotcrete this bridge. So we might have to figure that out yet before, so we can put it in the budget. So anywho, be expecting to see that in the budget. I don't know what else to talk about it. Everybody's seen the bridge.
Yeah, Outagamie County used to do that work. Their shotcrete machine is obsolete right now, and so they don't have one that's in working order. So we'd have to contact a different contractor for it. So I don't know if that'd be easy to detect, and there's a few of them online, but I'll talk to you about that.
All right. Again, we're just going to try and get a budget number this year and next year. If it's more than 5,000, then we'll have to go out and get quotes. Well, we'll get quotes anyways.
Just for heads up, all bridges in the county have to be inspected every 2 years. So that's an ongoing process. So
Who inspects them?
the village has a contract with Outagamie County, and they used to have an outside contract. The county used to do it themselves. They got an outside contractor in when the M35 bridge failed in Minnesota, because that changed all the criteria and they added a bunch of things. And I think Outagamie County is going back into that inspection. And Andy Rawle at the Highway Department is the head of their bridge program. So typically the county inspects their bridges 1 year, and then they do the municipalities on an off year, so vice versa. And then you get a printout of everything about the bridge, photos of the bridge, and then recommended maintenance. State Highway 15, that bypass sewer interceptor, we're looking at if there is development over on Grandview by Horton Hills. Talked to Carl about, well, Carl Ash called me and said at some time underneath that right of way, we'll have to have a sewer line if that area needs to be serviced with sewer.
Yeah, depending on the development up there in Ash Hills, it's either a pay me now or pay me later type scenario we're in. We're trying to find the cheapest way to put in a preliminary sewer pipe. So if that does develop up there, we don't have to pay somebody to come in here and bore underneath the bypass. If we can do it ahead of time while they're rough grading and just throw a pipe in there, it'd be a whole lot cheaper. Now the problem with that is we don't have any development coming up there, so we're going to invest in putting 500 feet of pipe underneath a highway, but it's just going to be capped on either end in case something happens in the future. But if something does happen in the future, I'm going to pass this picture around. It's kind of where it is. It's behind the elementary school over here in the low spot, but I mean, it'd be easy enough to just push it off, but if we don't do it now, it's going to cost a whole lot more later. And this is something we've got to be in agreement with the DOT. They need to show it on their plans, put it in their spec book, even though we would probably pay to have it installed, but it needs to be on their plan. So whatever we do over there, we've got to decide here pretty quick because they're moving forward with the final design. So I think, and odds are, it would probably, we wouldn't have to pay for that piece of pipe until 2021.
Yeah.
I figured right around 15 to 18,000.
And if that development did go a different way, we could I'll always say, hey, that I would, like to see the village kind of go with planning for it. We don't have to put the actual pipe in until we,
Yeah. Something could change and we
yeah,
could just
so
pull,
could be 2 years
pull
from
the
now,
plug.
but that, we would actually put the pipe in, but we need the grades for it now and location.
There is an option for taking the sewage back up to Nash Street, but none of them are good, and they're most of them, you can either put in another lift station, which we don't wanna do that when we've got gravity on our becken, or do a lot of fancy work near their bridge abutments and trying to squeeze it along the right of way to bypass, and that might be a lot more costly than putting a pipe in. So we looked at several options. Putting a pipe in virgin soil, we could probably get it done for 25 bucks a foot. If we were to come back later and bore it, it'd be close to $80 to $90 a foot. So anyway, just me and Dan are looking into it. We're not looking for authorization to spend the money. It's just that we're gonna plan for it. Get it on the books, get it on the DOT books. Like I said, we can always pull the plug on it later, but we need to get it shown on DOT blueprints. So.
Typically, if you get a contractor doing bypass and you don't have it, if you didn't do the preliminary work for it, they could say, hey, we're building, it's our right of way to work on, and you guys have to wait till later, which would drive the cost way up. So we have to get ahead of the process there.
Does anybody have any real questions on? I know there's a lot of what ifs and content. We don't know what the future holds for Nash Hills, but if we don't do something now, it could cost us a bunch later. So I think we plan for it.
What kind of excess costs are we talking about?
Hmm?
What kind of costs are we talking about?
All 15 to 18,000.
And if we don't do it now, then
5 times.
5 times that?
Yeah, easy.
Oh, then it's an easy choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but
All
you
right.
should know about it.
A lot more.
We do know we want Nash Hills developed. We're currently pursuing developers, trying to talk them into buying that land and developing. The only viable option is to bring that through school district property, and that's a whole nother subject, but,
We have Gravity working with us there, and
yeah.
worst case scenarios, and I don't think it would ever fit over there, lift pumps.
I don't, well, I know other communities do, but I don't like multiple back-to-back lift stations. We've got one on Main Street, so basically we'd be pumping it up to Nash and letting it run back to Main Street and then pumping it up to.
So does the village normally assume the cost of running to those? So it doesn't fall back to the developer at all?
If there was a developer,
If there was a developer?
we could, but
We
right
could.
now there's no developer.
Okay.
Usually it's 2 site.
So so the village assumes the cost up to the site, and then after that, the developer?
Correct.
So either way, we're gonna have to absorb the cost
For the most part.
for what we're at here, what we're looking at? Okay.
Yeah, and there's instances where, yeah, the developer may pay to run it out to some farm or something, just because they wanna do it, but in this case, yeah, we would bear the burden of that.
Okay.
So I guess what we're looking for is, I don't think we're gonna take this back to full board, but we are gonna move forward just the planning for that to go in, and then hopefully in early 21, the bypass, they start bulldozing, then we can get out there and then we can vote on it, so.
Next item on the agenda, number 4, is talking about 2020 road maintenance. And I had Carl printed out some sheets for showing our capital improvement plan. The first few sheets, they include public safety and facilities and everything. So, but if you go to the back page, you'll see the 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 5-year capital improvement plan. We're just starting to fill some of those items in so we can get a plan for the next 5 or 6 years what we're in. And that falls into the capital improvement. But we're talking about, we talked to Carl, I'd like to see some money put into the roads just for on maintenance and typically topical treatments to get our road lives up to where they should be. The village should, from my assessment, I'd say we're behind on maintaining our roads here, and we'd like to get 25, 30 years out of a road rather than 12 to 15. So we're talking about putting a program together, maybe putting about $30,000 in it. This be per year cost, and so we could get crack filling, some seal coating,
Yeah.
some spot work where we have patch and do or failed areas on pavement. But we'd like to get ahead on our maintenance so that our road beds last quite a bit longer, so.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when it comes to budget time, especially over the last 10 years or so, street maintenance is one area where you can cut. And we've whittled it down to about 25,000 per year in street maintenance funds. But when I say street maintenance funds, that's street maintenance, it's snow overruns, it's anything you can imagine. Street sweeping is a big chunk of that. So really, the village this size has only been spending $5,000 to $10,000 a year for street maintenance. And it's unacceptable, but it was a reality. And given the current, with the TID 2 coming offline, with the growth we're seeing, with the leadership by him and other stuff, we're starting to see some growth back into our tax levy. So what we're asking for is put an additional 25 to 35, I know Dan said 30, but 25 to 35 back in that street maintenance column. So we'd bump it from 20 or 22.5, I think I had it last year, up to around 50 or so. That way we've got money for crack sealing, we've got money for other surface treatments. And we'll still continue to do other projects, you know, in the utility and stuff like that, but we need to take care of the streets we got, otherwise we're gonna, yeah. And part of this whole package is, since we're expected to pay out some debt early, or get out from under some debt early next year, and with the TID, again, the TID 2 coming back online, one of the things I want to buy to assist that program, still have that 50,000 in there, but a one-time purchase of a mastic patching machine. It heats up, it's like a tar machine, except it's much improved, and it uses mastic instead of that old cheap rubber. We want to make a one-time purchase of those. Those are around $50,000, but whenever we pay somebody to come in and do that, it's about $8,000 to $10,000. So, and we almost need to have all 4 of our little subdivisions done, so we could pay for our machine if we do it ourselves. But we could still do treatments, overlays, chip seal. One of the things we need to do is, we've got some nice roads in town, but we're not maintaining them. So with the weather we have up north here, we're just not getting the life out of them we should. So I don't know. Dan, you want to talk about different types of treatments? Because
But typically on a new road that's paved, you want, if it's overlay, you want to be crack filling it maybe between 3 and 4 years new. If it's a new road not overlay and you're going on top of gravel, then that doesn't crack quite as bad, doesn't reflect crack, but you still want to crack fill that within 4 or 5 years of that pavement being laid. And everything that you're doing is to keep water out of that road base, the stone. And you keep that sealed up like the umbrella. You have you just prolong the life. Once a road gets past half its life, if you haven't done everything, then costs go way up and you just can't save it.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a replacement quite a bit sooner, probably in the 10 to 15 year mark, when they get really get bad in alligator.
and sometimes even throwing money at it sometimes doesn't help. Look at Warner Street. We rebuilt that, Janie. Do you recall? That was around the year 2000, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. It's junk. It's beyond repair. So we're planning on replacing that in a couple of years. But you look at Lakeshore Subdivision. We got $1 million tied up in infrastructure in there, and it's already starting to crack. And we didn't have the money to keep it, to protect it, and make sure it lasts another 10 to 20 years. So. Again, with the purchase of a massive machine and continually putting money back into street treatments, we feel we can start getting back on track. And I think financially, we're finally there. It's something we've been lacking for quite a few years. And we still expect taxes to go down, so doing a good job.
So when would you purchase it?
It probably, well, it'd be after the first of the year, but probably before spring. See what's out there. That's when those companies tend to put their best prices on stuff. Again, that would be in the budget, so we would discuss it more then.
That machine is not to fix all, you still want a crack fill, because crack fill is a little more efficient when the road bed is new,
Yeah.
but,
A mastic machine,
where
go
you
wider.
have potholes and the cracks that are 3 to 4 inches wide, you can't crack fill them anymore. That pavement is deteriorated enough that the crack filler doesn't have anything to glue itself to. So if there's nothing to adhere there, then it pops out and you run back into the same thing. So,
yeah, crack filling, that's a whole different type of machine. You've got to buy the routers, the big powered routers. It's a dirty job, and we would probably still contract that out because that's most efficient. And then we would go take care of areas like Cherry Street. It's one of our newer roads as well. But the center line or the center joint is failing, so we need something that'll spread like a 12-inch wide mastic patch right down the middle of it. And that'll keep the water out of there. That'll make it last another 5 to 10 years easy. So again, it's a combination of things we want to do. Treatments, gravel overlay chip seals, crack filling, and mastic, for doing potholes and bigger cracks and areas like that. So we're looking at 3 or 4 pronged approach at fixing our streets up. Plus, we want to tackle, we're going to try and tackle Birch Street next year in the budget. The 300 block of Birch Street, that's where where you pull out to go back to T. For whatever reason, that road's junk. It's got good utilities, but the road is junk. So that's in the budget already. And we just had a meeting with a local road improvement program. And I'm trying to get, don't count on it just yet, but I'm trying to get another $37,000 out of that. And if that comes to fruition, I'm probably going to take care of Briggs Street. That's our worst road. That just means I'll have to, it'll probably take another $20,000 or $30,000 of utility money to just get us out of that intersection. But Briggs Street is horrible, horrible. We'd be better off if it was gravel, so it practically is gravel. Anyways, hopefully we get that grant. It looks like we may, but there's a couple of other communities we haven't heard from yet. So again, that would be in the budget as well. So yeah, there's a lot to do out there. We just haven't had the money in the past to do it, and I think finally we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel.
But we'll continue to evaluate. There's a PACER program out there that every year the villages and townships have to rate their roads and turn that assessment into the state. Bad thing about it is, now the state has criteria for the roads. They don't know what kind of traffic's on top of it, or what your road's going to be used for, or what kind of life you really need to get out of it. So everything that the village is doing on our roads, we want to be able to decide so we get our best bang for the buck. So
yeah, it's part of that PACER rating entry. I stopped looking at it a number of years ago because it was frustrating, but we're, according to PACER in the state, we're over $400,000 just behind in just maintenance. We're asking for 30,000 additional. We're over 400,000 just in treatment behind, according to PACER. So again, we're not looking to fix everything overnight, but we want the ability to protect the roads we have, the condition of them, and just keep them from getting any worse.
And that's another thing people see, so that's something they can see and recognize being done, so that's important too.
People, believe it or not, people are very visual. They know they pay all these taxes, and
They wanna see what they're getting for their buck.
they can't see the utilities in the ground, or the cops out at night, but they do see your roads, and our roads aren't very pretty. And of course, we're fighting frost and the weather. it's difficult to keep roads up here. It's much more expensive in Wisconsin to maintain your roads than it is in Texas or Florida. So, unfortunately, our roads tend to fall apart a lot quicker. So anything we can do to help, like patching or mastic or
Yeah,
routing.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you keep the water out of the basin, and if there's a lot less water content underneath your roads, you get a lot less freezing underneath and heating. So drier the better.
Yeah, so I don't know. Do you guys have any questions about road maintenance? If you think it's good or a bad idea to start putting a little more money, since we're financially able to put a little more money back into the street maintenance? I know there's always, every department's always trying to clamor for more money, but I think we can all agree that street maintenance has always been last at the trough. So.
Are we able to put more than 30,000?
Well, it's gonna end up, right now, like I said, I put 20 to 25, depending on how the budget turns out. I
Yeah,
wanna make sure it's 50 to 55.
yeah, I mean,
every
to
year.
do the additional 30.
Yeah, and that doesn't include any projects like Birch Street. That would be a 443, which is a capital project. So we try to find money for that as well, either through grants or just any other way we can get a road fixed.
And Carl and I agree, if we wanna we wanna keep our projects as projects and our maintenance as maintenance. Otherwise, it's too easy to gobble up $30,000 on a project, and if you take out on maintenance, then you're back to square one for the next year.
Yeah.
TID 2 is also throwing a couple wrenches at us right now. By retiring a TID, you bring the increment in. We did rough calculations today. The TID, I don't know the numbers, but we did the rough calculation. The TID should produce increments to the village's side of about $127,000 additional per year. So you take the increment, you multiply, or you divide it by 1,000, that gets you 1,000 pieces. Multiply that by 0.40, which essentially is a rough calculation of what the village sees out of the increment. That would give us $127,000 extra to our budget. However, TID 2 had debt that wasn't paid properly. It was put to rest too early. So we're waiting on answers yet. Essentially, we are more than likely going to have to pull more money out of savings this year and pay down another note, because TID 2 was responsible for it, but you can't pay it if TID 2 is not alive anymore. So we are directed from Ehlers to pay down on it. That essentially takes $72,000 of levy limit that we just took, or we just acquired from the TID, and takes it right back out, because we can't tax for it. So we're kind of taking some of our gain right away. It's unfortunate. However, positives, the debt goes away, so whatever we were going to pay on an annual basis is there now also to use, but in a roundabout way, we're 2 steps forward, 1 back. And so we got some calculations here yet with the budget, but we are money ahead. We paid down debt, so and it's a good movement forward, put it that way. And we have no, as of right now, we don't anticipate borrowing for a long time. So we're sitting in a good spot here.
In either the utility or the general fund.
Yeah, and all the expenses that we paid last year, they're still more than required to cover our backside as required by the state. And so we have more than enough. The calculation is usually whatever your debt capacity is or whatever your debt load is, they want you to have at least that in savings. We have that 1.5 times. So
Maybe only 20K or 25K this year, but next year we can maybe beef that up.
yeah,
Do a little more
What?
to get further along.
No.
Yeah. We're there's other little, like a scraper bar or a push blade, things like that make sense that we might want to keep investing in to make the job of public works easier. And those are going to be something that you might pay for now, but it's going to reap a benefit for the next 15 years. So things that are time saving,
Coffee.
that we didn't have, the guys didn't have, and it's going to make it a lot easier. So those small investments are going to reap benefit.
So then by doing this, are we gonna have enough manpower, or are we gonna need more?
No, I
That's
don't
the
think we're
key.
gonna need more. I think
Think we're gonna be okay?
we're probably just gonna rely more on summer help, more on the part-timers. We do anyways, but I think we've got money in our budget. We've got money in our budget to have our guy work the compost site Wednesdays and Fridays, or Wednesdays and Saturdays, and there's always a little bit extra. It's, part-timers practically cost practically nothing in the big scheme of things, so, yeah, we're fine.
And
If we can go out 1 day a week with that mastic machine, and we can do a lot of damage, so.
yeah, same thing with the street sweeper that we've acquired, you know, once that's functional, parts are coming together on that, so,
Now, where there come a day, we might need somebody.
we're looking at, as the summer months creep up, Ryan and Carl especially have been looking at reassigning people to different tasks.
Okay.
Because the other part that I told Carl, I want to try to eliminate next year's contracting services for like grass cutting. Whereas I'd rather, let's make it a priority instead of spending, you know, the $390 odd that we pay for the cemetery to be cut. Let's make a priority of trying to get that figured out, and then we'll kind of conquer the other stuff later. We got to make that a first priority, and then once that's done,
Low-hanging fruit.
yeah, exactly. And if that's reassigning people to different tasks, we're gonna have to look at it. Just because we just gotta, we'll make time for that 6 hours, put it that way.
But, you know, working extra hours, rather than adding employees right now, I think, we have a good, pool of employees that are trained and everything, so, leave that money here and you work a few more hours to get projects done, especially maintenance, be a lot easier, you know, Carl, let's say with a massive machine, if we own it, we control it when it comes in, if it's our schedule, rather than trying to fit somebody else's schedule when you're in peak season here with the ball fields and everything else, so.
Yeah, as part of the capital improvement plan, it's not in there, but, I think what David's got, he has a thought on, you know, instead of the police department buying SUVs and, you know, maybe we can convert them over to pickup trucks. And then when they're done with the pickup truck, we can convert it over to Public Works and save some money that way instead of Public Works buying pickup trucks and PD buying SUVs. Public Works, only a couple of vehicles need to be new, or everyday park vehicles, stuff like that. They don't need to be brand new. So maybe next year we buy a pickup truck for the police department, and then in 5 years they can kick that down to Public Works. So that would make more sense. There's always going to be 1 or 2 new vehicles in Public Works, but the majority of them can be used. You know, we have a lot of used equipment and we do just fine with it, but plow trucks, of course, I'd like that to be newer. Our water truck, you know, year spawn emergencies, that should be new, but the rest of the fleet can be old, used, whatever. So, again, we're looking at the big picture, so. Again, if you guys take this home, look at it, and it's not official, we haven't adopted it, but if you see anything, you got any questions about, get back to me or Dan. Most of the pricing I do have in here is pretty close to being accurate. So, any questions, give me or Dan a call.
And as this document we kind of work on and stuff like that, we'll try to get some of the project limits down, so how far on a section of road, how far we're actually doing, and I'm used to, you know, putting a lower note why we're doing it, you know, like Oak Street, we know what the water main looks like underneath that road, because of the last 4 or 5 water main breaks, so that we know, but some of these other areas where we've got down, you know, pavements deteriorated and falling apart, you know, then we can put a note there why we're doing it, so.
Yeah, we can do that. Some of the things in here are dependent upon, again, the bypass, the state, how much money the state kicks back to the county. Could affect a few of these items in the capital plan. How much money what we can get out of the county as part of jurisdictional transfer. You know, we're currently after a big grant for a trail and other things along Main Street. So even though we don't physically budget for something, it may fall into our lap if conditions are right. So I'd like to thank David for being on top of all that stuff. Right now we're working on possibly a big grant. So again, it's we're hinging it on the bypass. So
We might as well speak to that too. So Carl and I and Ryan attended, we were at Allegheny County Highway Department today. The premise of the meeting was for the local road improvement plan. So what they do is they pool all the, is there 10 communities?
Yeah.
10 communities in the pool. It's a verbal agreement amongst the 10 communities. This year's pool is about $112,000. If you have a project that you feel is needed in your community, you basically put your name in the hat. As of today, it was Kaukauna and Hortonville. So those were the only two there. Kaukauna would take their share, Hortonville would take the share, as Carl spoke to earlier, $37,000 and change. We've got to give due justice to the other communities that weren't represented today. 3 out of the 10 are in the hole, so they're not even eligible for funds. You can work yourself into the hole if all the others agree. It's usually been agreed upon that you take your turn, you get your money. So Carl's saying, hey, we got some viable projects, we'd like to take our money out. Get that $37,000, use it to do some road repair. The other piece of the puzzle, today we started talking about the $75 million grant. It's the MSL, so Multimodal Supplement Land Improvement Grant. Came from Governor Evers. That is the grant that we solicited MSA to do the up to $10,000 to help us write the grant. We watched the webinar on Monday. We had Joe from MSA in office Monday. We had questions though, because with the participation of that highway, it's still a state highway. When the bypass goes through, it's supposed to get kicked down to county. County's supposed to repair it. So two caveats. How do we write a grant that's potentially not even our property if it's a state highway? Are we wasting our time writing that grant? And then step 2, if it becomes a county grant or a county funded highway, they're supposed to repair it. So why should we be putting money in this when the county's already supposed to be on the hook for it? So we kind of got a verbal out of Dean today from Outagamie County that we're expecting between $5 and $6 million for that restoration from the county when that's all said and done. That's what they're figuring on contributing from east to west to rehabilitate Highway 15 through our downtown corridor. With that being said, we think the best interest for us grant writing would be to continue that trail from Greendale Road on the east side of the village into the park structure, into Alonzo, and then essentially allow the county to take over the middle section, which is basically sidewalks and what they're gonna repair anyway in 15, and then we pick it up on the other side of town over by Miller Park and continue it westward. So we're gonna structure our grant with MSA as that structure through the sidewalk and park-like setting, continuing the pathway from where Greendale ends, and that's built into the Highway 15 bypass, into the village. Let the county take over with the downtown restoration, pick it up on the west end and take it out of city limits. So that's how we're gonna point our grant. And then,
Yeah.
what else do you wanna add, Carl?
Well, the county is on board with our plans for downtown with the bulb outs. They wanna see 4-way stop signs at Mill on Main, like I do. They wanna see, and we're gonna get 4-way stop signs at Nash and Main, cause those lights are coming out. We're gonna get new bulb outs in front of the old library and down by Porky's. It's gonna give us more parking. We're gonna get trees down there, widened sidewalks. They're all for all that stuff. But due to the nature of that grant, we don't wanna really tie it in with the road. They're not gonna go for that, because I think most of it was bridges, harbors, railroads. That's the focus of it, and we didn't know that until we watched the webinar.
Multimodal.
Or pedestrian trails.
Correct.
Which pedestrian trails are not paid for by the DOT, so we might as well pick up the trail that ends at Greendale, bring it all the way to Lonzo, maybe put a sidewalk to the elementary schools on that side of the road, put a trail behind, we'll go back onto the surface, what we call sharrows, bicycle lanes down Main Street from Quick Trip down to downtown, and then we'll have a trail, paved trail going behind Main Street, and then behind the Opera House, and then behind the backside of Miller Park, and then coming back up by the bridge there over Blackwater Creek, and then we'll have sharrows, which are bike lanes, on Main Street to the industrial park. And the county talked about lowering speed limits on the whole entire
Follow the
section.
river, or the creek, it'll follow.
Yeah, we follow the creek.
Yep.
This is all part of our park plan, so everything's kind of falling in place. We just have to know the battles to pick. If we go with this grant and we say we want new sidewalks or lights downtown, we're not gonna get it. But if we want this trail, Yeah.
It doesn't include utilities. That was written right in the grant. So if there's anything that the village would be on the hook for,
Lighting the path and.
downtown would be utilities, not, and,
One
And
nice
nothing,
thing,
nothing in the grant would speaks to utilities at all.
no,
I was
but
hoping for that.
one nice thing Dean said, I don't know, but the state and the county are deciding which one of them is gonna pay for the stormwater downtown, so.
Oh,
that's-
perfect.
That's good.
it's a big ticket item.
So realistically, when the time comes, the village should only have to do streetlights, new electrical for the streetlights. That's about it to improve downtown.
And then also keep in mind, that's TID 5, so it is also
Yeah.
a receiver TID, so all extra monies that are in TID 3 will help offset that cost.
Yeah.
So we're set up well going
Is
into
the
the
light
future.
staying by Quick Trip then? Is that the
We
only light
probably,
that's
we
gonna
probably
stay
run
there?
decorative streetlights all the way to Quick Trip.
She's talking.
I mean, actual signal light.
Stop and go.
Oh, we're gonna try and keep them,
I mean, it makes sense from the school standpoint,
otherwise
but.
it would be a nightmare if you had every kid come to a stop.
Yeah, get traffic.
Can you
out.
imagine?
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
No, I would have hoped that you would have kept that one, that makes sense to me,
Yeah.
but
Well, it would have been nice to keep the one at Maine, but it's not really our choice. But we put our foot down when they talked about pulling the one out for the school. So we may have to pay for maintenance, even though they own it and whatever, we may have to pay for maintenance, so we're gonna keep it regardless. It may cost us a little bit of money, but, the one at Nash, you know, if we've got 19 of the 20,000 cars off of Main Street, then I for one will probably go back downtown to eat, like across the road without getting run over, so.
We'll see.
That'll be nice.
I'm wondering if there might be something with lighting, you're talking about all the trails and everything with the dark cities. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah,
And just the type of lighting would be
Dark
there?
Skies, yeah,
Yeah,
that
dark
group.
yeah.
That is good, but we're not looking for that downtown. No, the community I'm looking at retiring to has that. But
We're not retiring to Hortonville?
no.
that's not loving.
Good one.
Yeah, they have
Especially
Dark
since we're
Skies
looking at
initiative.
building a 55-plus community, I mean,
If we can get them in here, if they don't, you know, David's working on that.
It might be something to check for.
Oh, you mean the Dark Skies Initiative? I don't know if that's what we want for, because we're gonna want decorative streetlights. If we go for Dark Skies Initiative streetlights, and downtown's gonna be kind of spooky.
Maybe
I
it
know,
could be
I know where you're
both.
going with it, yeah, but we want ornamental type streetlights, basically starting at the Opera House, running all the way to Quick Trip. Now, they'd be spaced out a little bit more,
they wouldn't even.
where
be-
Julie lives from that point on to Quick Trip. They wouldn't be as close, they'd be spaced out a little bit more, but we'd carry the same theme all the way to Gilbert's, basically.
That grant wouldn't cover at all any lighting along, I mean, I'm thinking,
No.
when you're riding that path by the river, or by the
Oh,
creek,
well,
that's
that,
not,
that,
that's dark.
That's different, yeah.
That would be
they might
dark.
do. Yeah. Yeah, we could probably do that as part of the grant.
I mean, I'm not looking at downtown light, I'm talking just along that
Yeah.
path in
If
that
it's trail
dark.
lighting, yeah, that's a whole different ballgame. But if it's street lighting,
Something.
that's, yeah, that's different. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I was confused. But yeah, we would definitely want to run power through there, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. We certainly have the power in the park, we have the power at the Opera House, and we have access to power. Well, we don't really need much downtown when that time again. Yeah, we can do it, and I don't think it would cost that much.
I just think from a
Just-
safety
just a few-
standpoint, it's necessary.
Just a few lights around the perimeter of the park.
Right.
I think it would look great.
Mhm.
So again, that's all part of the, our 5-year comprehensive park plan, so, which we gotta update. So, anyways, that's all I have.
So, anyway, as we talked about, if, and Carl mentioned, you know, review what we have in this document, and, we'll tweak it, and, it's a floating document, so some years, as Carl said, some years you're gonna do more in one area than another because it makes sense, and, but it gives us a direction of, in the future, 5 or 6 years, so. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, we close the meeting.
Need a motion to
We
adjourn?
need a motion.
Motion to adjourn,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second,
I'll second.
motion carried.
I didn't know I was gonna be signing.